Hello and welcome to Turkey Talks. This week we are going to talk about NATO enlargement. Turkish president made very important statements this week, and he said Finland will be welcome to the organization, but Sweden will have to wait. I am joined by Professor Tarık Oğuzlu from İstanbul Aydın University and Kadir Ustun from Washington. Welcome both.
Hello.
I don't know if you had chance to listen President in his weekly address in the Parliament group. He made a very strong statement against Sweden. He pointed the Quran desecration, and he said under these circumstances, Swedish application will have to wait. And he separated Finland from their bid to NATO membership. Maybe Professor Oğuzlu, we can start with you. Do you think this strategy will help Turkey to get over the pressure from the United States, because they want both countries in the NATO, but Turkey has expectations, especially from Sweden, especially their support to terror organizations. Do you think this strategy will work for Turkey?
I think we have to underline one particularly important point at the very beginning. Since June last year, Turkey and Finland and Sweden had signed a kind of memorandum of understanding regarding the formalities of the membership prospect of these two countries. We have the picture that these three countries should reach a kind of compromise solution so that both Finland and Sweden will join the NATO alliance simultaneously at the same time. That was the initial bargaining, as far as I know. And many times in the past, Swedish and Finnish authorities have underlined that their bid for membership should be treated together simultaneously. They don't want to go alone in this process. We knew it. But we also know that Finland seems to have fulfilled a great degree of Turkey's demands in this particular process, whereas Sweden seems to have lagged behind. And in recent years, in recent months actually, and actually in recent weeks, we have come to the conclusion that there is a growing degree of uneasiness between Turkey and Sweden concerning to what extent Sweden appears to be ready to fulfill the demands of this memorandum of understanding. So at this particular juncture, Turkish authorities seem to have decided that if they brought the issue of Finland's membership to the alliance, that might offer a kind of face-saving solution alongside the road. Because given the current situation, it seems to be highly unlikely that Turkish authorities will approve of Sweden's membership in the alliance. But at least, as we have just pointed out, giving Turkish green light to Finland's membership at this particular stage might help lessen the degree of tension within the alliance, within NATO on the one hand, and also concerning the trilateral relationship on the other hand. It might be a strategy, a good strategy on the part of Turkish authorities, but I am not that much optimistic about the possibility of this strategy yielding positive outcomes, because for this strategy to yield some positive outcomes, Finnish authorities needs to agree to this proposal. So they should separate their membership bid for NATO from the membership bid of Sweden. So, and this seems to be quite unlikely. And as far as I read the developments, Finnish and Swedish authorities frequently say that you should treat our membership together. We are together. We don't want to separate our trajectory, they say it. But we have to wait and see. It is now too early, actually, at this particular stage.
Kadir, what is your take on this? Do you think this will put more pressure on Swedish side if Finland would agree with the proposal?
Well, there have been different signals. Some of them, coming out of Finland was saying they might consider separating the applications, but I think there are more other statements that say that they don't see their security separate from that of Sweden. But in any case, this was going to be resolved in the summer, in July. And Sweden said that they need 6 months to revise their laws and take a look at it. And we're seeing some public statements that, some Swedish authorities, political figures are saying that, these kind of activities inside Sweden, we need to take another look at these because, inciting violence by using freedom of speech, freedom of assembly in Sweden doesn't work for Swedish national security either. So it might be resolved along the way, but if this turns out to be a sort of, if there's no progress and if Sweden is waiting for the Turkish election results to move, then that may not be, easy for them to convince Turkey afterwards. Especially if President Erdoğan wins and he made these statements, strong statements, Sweden, if they make no progress right now and then wait until after the election, that's going to be very problematic. So the other angle that you mentioned at the beginning is the United States angle. If, there's been some debate about whether U.S. was tying the membership talks to F-16 sales to Turkey. Officials have said no, there is no direct correlation, but we know that, that would make kind of Congress happier. That's been the statement by U.S. ambassador in Turkey. And most recently, Senator von Holland made some strong, clear statements that these two issues were tied. He said that, unless Sweden and Finland are in NATO, Turkey won't get F-16s. But of course, this is a very problematic statement. It's not the position of the U.S. administration, but it shows that, there are hurdles in the U.S. Congress before the F-16 sales, and there is a tendency to tie this security issue, this sort of military capacity issue, to a larger political and strategic issue such as NATO's enlargement. So it's becoming more complicated, I would say, in many ways.
Yeah, we know that Turkish-U.S. relations sour for the last couple of years, but after the visit of Turkish Foreign Minister to Washington last week, do you feel that, very minor, of course, a change in the attitude of the United States towards Turkey? Because especially after the war in Ukraine, Turkey played a major role, not only in the grain deal, but also Turkey tried to de-escalate, tried to keep dialogue between the two sides, and also as NATO member and as a regional power, Turkey did its best to at least contain the conflict. Do you think the understanding, Tarık, hocam, maybe you can explain, do you think there is a slight change in understanding of Turkey in the eyes of US, or do you think there is at least a thinking about reviewing at least the relations?
Actually, to be frank with you, I am of the view that Turkish-American relations are really difficult to improve in a very short period of time. We are at a very difficult situation right at the moment because the strategic and security priorities of the countries are apparently too different from each other. We know that there is a kind of ongoing rapprochement between the two presidencies regarding how useful Turkey would be in the emerging Cold War era great power competition in the context of US struggles with China and Russia. Americans very much recognize the importance of Turkey from a realistic perspective. But we also know that even the presidency, the White House, the executive agency, find it quite difficult to come around Turkey's positions, to get along well with Turkey's priorities, because the two sides have different priorities in the greater Middle Eastern region, in the Black Sea region, in the Eastern Mediterranean region. Even their position towards Russia are a little bit different from each other. We all know such kind of things. And just the visit of Foreign Minister Çavuşoğlu to Washington in recent days is really quite difficult to bring a new soul to this relationship. But at least what we observe is that compared to the congressman, American administration seems to be a little closer to Turkey's position. If this is a positive improvement in bilateral relations, yes, we have to take it as such. But, you know, the real breakthrough in bilateral relations will have to go through the Congress. The congressman should come to the conclusion that Turkey is really important for larger American geopolitical interests in the emerging great power competition. If they don't come to this position soon, I'm not that much optimistic. Any high-level visits between the two countries might produce a positive outcome. But on the other hand, I also need to underline another point. Just because the war in Ukraine is getting more difficult to resolve in a short period of time, just because of the fact that diplomatic routes to the solution are becoming more and more difficult, Turkey's presence in the Western international community appears to be quite important and vital. If the Americans do not find a way to bring Turkey back in the Western international community, Turkey, no matter how the election results will appear in the upcoming elections, might likely turn its way a little bit away from the West and coming much closer to the non-Western powers. It is a real possibility from my own perspective. This is quite important. And the Americans will come to this position. Many things have changed in recent years. The dynamics of global politics have changed. We are no longer living in a US-led American hegemony. We are no longer living in a unipolar era. We have fast moved into a kind of multipolar environment, a post-American international order. So if you treat Turkey as a important country, if you think that Turkey should be in the NATO or other international communities, so you should a little bit accommodate Turkey in this emerging power configuration. You should recognize the fact that Turkey is after for a strategic autonomy kind of thinking. So you should recognize this as a reality. But they find it quite difficult to do it. So the more Turks feel a little bit excluded from the Western international community, I think such kind of high-level visits are really unlikely to produce great breakthroughs in bilateral relationship.
Kadir, you are in Washington and you have contacts with Americans, say it's maybe politicians or think tankers and other people. Do you think the American administration have good understanding of Turkey? I mean, we are heading to the elections. Whatever the result is, there are some policies that I don't think can be changed by any government, like the PKK issue, the war against terror, the US attitude towards YPG, the Aegean problem with Greece, Eastern Mediterranean and Cyprus issue. We can put more things into this list. Do you think Americans understand the fact that these are state policy, it doesn't change, doesn't go with any government? Do you think this can help relations in the future?
Of course, there are many different circles. Depending on which circle, there's more or less degree of appreciation of the complexities that Turkey goes through in the region. But for the administration, for people who deal directly with these issues, the problem has been that is there a willingness to work with Turkey? That's more the question. And it is hard to say. For some issues, for Ukraine, for instance, whenever it kind of is an urgent matter for American national security, of course, they try to cooperate, talk to Turkey, and then But when it's, some of the traditional issues like, Greece aging, sea matters, they tend to default to default positions, basically. So, I mean, foreign minister's visit was part of a, strategic mechanism meeting. So it's helpful to sort of get the understanding deeper and fine-tune the positions, etc. A major breakthrough, of course, is difficult, and that can only come with the leaderships. Both presidents would have to come up with a vision for the relationship, and then it would have to be worked on. It's hard though. Last time around, it didn't end that well, to be honest. Obama, was saying Turkey could be a model in the Middle East, etc. That was taken with a grain of salt by the Turkish side, actually, at the time. But it's hard to create a common vision between these two countries, largely because Turkey is a regional power and the US is a global power. It has global sort of interests and priorities. They don't always match with the regional priorities of Turkey. And then there's direct conflict of interest, like in Syria. And I think that's one thing that really bleeds the relationship. But when it comes to Ukraine, that's a very, I think, important dynamic that the two sides could take advantage of, and they have to some extent recently. But now we are hearing more about, Russian sanctions against Russia, countries that continue to deal with Russia. Those are making the headlines or op-ed pieces a bit more. So if there is pressure from that side, like if the U.S. politicians ask Turkey to not do business with Russia or something like that, that could again be a downside in this opportunity space regarding Ukraine. And one thing is that, like Boris Johnson wrote a recent op-ed in Washington Post calling for Ukraine's NATO membership. Others are saying this much more loudly these days, but Turkey has been supporting Ukraine's NATO membership for a long time. And so if that debate becomes stronger and becomes serious, I think what you're saying is that, the recognition of Turkey's importance is going to be there. But again, the willingness to work together requires kind of more trust, and there's been a lot of mistrust, and that's not going away anytime soon. And after the elections, maybe there could be a new dynamic, because U.S. politicians will know if Erdoğan wins next 5 years, they're going to deal with Erdoğan. So that might bring a new dynamic.
May I jump in this and at some points, if it is okay?
Please.
I think in recent years, we have been clearly observing that there is a kind of pragmatic and realist transformation in Turkish foreign policy. On many different issues, it appears Turkey has come much closer to Western, quote-unquote, and American priorities. And Americans should recognize it. And Turkey has gone a great way to improve its relations with many countries with which it had problematical relations in recent past. And many of those countries are traditional American allies. We are talking about Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Israel, such countries. So Americans should look Turkey from a larger geopolitical perspective. If Turkey has improved its relations with those countries, this is somehow in the interest of the United States. So rather than antagonizing Turkey on many issues that very much concern Turkey's national security interests, if Americans a little bit change the way they look at Turkey from a patronizing attitude towards an accommodating attitude. I think Turkish authorities would enjoy this change on the American side and will try to do their best to improve bilateral relations to much higher levels. Because in the final analysis, the things that bring Turkey and the Western actors closer to each other are much deep and more intensive compared to the point that appear to bring Russia and Turkey closer to each other. And Turkey would find it quite easy to be in the Western camp in the emerging geopolitical competition if the Americans change their way of approach towards Turkey. I think, and this is very much about psychology as well, I am aware of it. It is difficult, but they need to go through this soul searching in one way or another.
Maybe this is related to the U.S. Policy about the Middle East, maybe because they lost interest after the withdrawal from Afghanistan and Iraq. Because I remember in 1990s when I started journalism, I remember every other week an American official said its foreign minister or a special envoy. I remember Dennis Ross was Clinton's special envoy, and every other week he was visiting Palestine, Israel, because there was peace process. Then even after the Intifada started in 2000s, Anthony Zinni, I remember several of names they were visiting. But now we see rare visits from American officials to the region as well. But recently, Anthony Blinken, the Secretary of State, he went to Egypt, as you mentioned, as one of the key allies for the U.S. in the region. He gave some messages about the human rights and other issues, but probably the idea was to have something to say in Palestine, because we know that when the United States ignore an issue as a superpower, it has consequences. Remember 2014 when Russians occupied Crimea, they let it happen, and Russians used that region as a foothold to expand and project their power in the Mediterranean, in Syria, in the Middle East in general. He also went to Israel and Palestine to meet with the leaders. Do you think that Americans are realizing that they don't have the luxury to leave the region, and as you mentioned, they should understand the key role of Turkey? Even if they want to leave, they need allies to take care of the region, and Turkey is such a big candidate for that. If you look at the last successes of Turkey, Kadir, what do you want to say something about that? Maybe you can also talk about the importance of Blinken visit to the region.
Blinken's visit, of course, is an attempt by the Biden administration, in my opinion, to keep the tensions down in the Israel-Palestinian conflict, and so that it doesn't give Washington a hard time. It doesn't bring a new vision, a new sort of push towards the peace process. It doesn't really say much in the way of achieving peace. It tries to basically tell the Israelis U.S. is committed to their security, and then tell the Palestinians we still support the two-state solution. I don't think any serious expert believes in that anymore. That the likelihood of that, the goal is, of course, would be it would be a great solution, but it's not happening anytime soon, and kind of everybody knows that. So in terms of remember, Netanyahu embarrassed Obama, and Biden was his vice president. During Biden's visit to Israel, they had announced some new settlements. So this dynamic will come back because there is Netanyahu government in Tel Aviv, and there will be new announcements for further settlements. There will be occasional flaring up of tensions, like the recent past 2 weeks. In just this month, more than 35, I think, Palestinians have lost their lives in the clashes. So we are kind of going back to that old dynamic under Netanyahu, and I think Washington is worried about that, how it could look on them, that they're not doing anything and they're not pushing for peace. But I don't believe it's going to go much beyond that, beyond trying to calm down the tensions. It doesn't come up with a kind of new idea or push for the peace process in a new, renewed kind of way. So there's not much to expect from that visit, to be honest.
Tarık Hocam, do you expect any, do you expect American re-engagement to the Middle East affairs more after this visit, or this is just a visit?
I think many important things have been taking place in not only in global politics but also in Middle Eastern politics as well. What we have been observing in recent years is that all great powers have already intensified their initiatives to make routes to Middle Eastern countries. In recent days, for example, we have witnessed the Chinese delegation visiting many Middle Eastern countries. In the past, we had witnessed other very important global powers paying important visits to the countries in the region. So it has already become a kind of a part of this ongoing geopolitical competition. Whenever Chinese go, Americans follow. Whenever Americans go, Chinese follow. Whenever Russians go, Americans follow. So if United States approaches to the region from the perspective of this emerging great power politics, they should increase their commitment to the region. But I am not that much confident that this will be happening in the near future, because the American body politic seems to be quite tired of Middle Eastern issues. So the public opinion in the United States is putting so much pressure on American administration to put not only the troops back home, but also decrease the scale of American involvement in non-American contingencies. But this is not the way for the United States to deal with this Russian and emerging Chinese challenges. And this is not the way for the United States to regain the confidence of the traditional American allies in the region, including Turkey as well. So if they are really committed to produce a positive outcome in the region, and if they are really sincere in terms of gaining a geopolitical victory against other global powers, they should not only adopt a realistic and pragmatic approach towards the countries in the region, but also prove their sincerity regarding they really accommodate the strategic priorities of the countries in the region. This is not what they are doing. This is something missing in the American approach towards the region. And this American visit to Israel is full of problems. And Israel has been going through an illiberal, non-democratic transformation in recent months, I assume. But also, on the other hand, the American administration, the Biden administration, tend to speak with an ideological language in global politics. So, but on the other hand, we also know that Israel is very much important in terms of American interest in the region. So how to reconcile these different impulses in a successful manner? Yani, adopting a realpolitik perspective, but on the other hand, criticizing the illiberal, non-democratic transformation in Israel. So how to reconcile these things? It is extremely difficult from an American perspective. I think the burden on Biden administration is to prove that, how can I say it, either to their ideology or to the realpolitik needs, geopolitical necessities. So they should find an answer to this question. And this logic also applies to Turkish-American relations as well. They need to be clear on their goals. And I think they are not that clear enough. They have a confusion in their mindset.
Kadir, do you think this confusion is only in the Middle East or also in the Ukrainian field? Let's close this meeting program with this, maybe because we heard that new armament plans are on the table. There are talks about moving new armed vehicles to Ukraine, but these messages are conflicting. Some people say, okay, enough, we have spent enough money to Ukraine, maybe we should leave it as it is, or NATO. They are calling for more support from non-NATO countries like South Korea and others. What is your opinion on this problem?
Well, we see that, lack of strategies, impact on the Ukrainian front as well. Of course, Biden administration has been able to mobilize NATO for help for Ukraine to defend itself, and they've been successful. They've been largely successful. There have been some recent sort of, cracks, let's say, but that was quickly resolved in the case of Leopard 2 tanks being given to Ukraine. But now Ukraine is asking for jet fighters, airplanes, and some countries in the U.S. and Germany quickly said no, but some other countries are saying they might consider it. So that's the next challenge: how to support Ukraine. But then lack of strategy strikes us because what is the goal? What is the end goal? How are you going to bring about peace? So there's confusion. I would agree that global strategic confusion is manifesting itself on the Ukrainian front in that way. Biden is clear about supporting Ukraine. There's no question, to the end, he says. But what end it's not clear. Does that, let's say, Ukrainian victory include Crimea, all of Ukraine? So those are some of the questions. Like you said, NATO General Secretary Stoltenberg is visiting Japan and South Korea to actually help increase the manufacturing and supply chain for defense materials, because Europe is now is having a hard time resupplying its own resources. They've given so much to Ukraine that they are running out of stock of many items. And Stoltenberg's message was interesting because he said to Japan and South Korea, if Putin wins in Ukraine, this will give a message to China that China can also win through brute force. So he's trying to make the case that this supporting Ukraine is also about kind of pushing back against Chinese ambitions in the East. So it was interesting. So what happens in Ukraine is not staying in Ukraine.
Well, thank you very much, Kadir. Thank you very much, Professor Oğuzlu, for your comments. With this, we come to the end of this show. Hope to see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.